It is my very great pleasure to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Ms. Glenda Chong. Currently the co-host of Primetime Asia at Channel News Asia, Glenda is an award-winning presenter. She served as China correspondent for 3 years in Shanghai, where highlights of her work include reporting on the 2008 Beijing Olympics, covering the devastating aftermath of the 2008 Sichuan earthquake and the 2010 Shanghai World Expo. Before her posting in China, Glenda presented Channel News Asia's main news programs, fronting major breaking stories, including the 2004 Asian tsunami and the 2003 SARS outbreak in Singapore. There was a memorable year in 2004 when she anchored the coverage of the results of the American and Taiwanese presidential elections, as well as the Malaysian election. In addition, she headed to Jakarta to report and anchor the bulletin during the Indonesian presidential election. Glenda has also interviewed some of the world's top newsmakers, including UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Glenda was named Best News Anchor at the Asian Television Awards in 2001. She was also awarded Best Presenter at MediaCorp's Annual Excellence Awards in 2005. Glenda graduated summa cum laude from Boston University with a Bachelor of Science in Broadcast Journalism, and she holds a Master's in International Studies from NUS. May I now invite Glenda to deliver her speech, please.
Member, NUS Board of Trustees, Mr. Abdullah Kamuji, distinguished guests, graduates, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to the class of 2013. Now, I'm incredibly honored to be speaking to you from this podium today, but believe it or not, I'm also horrifically terrified. Now, I know I shouldn't be. After all, I deliver the news to you every night, to you and all Channel News Asia's viewers, from Bangkok to Bali, Tokyo to Thailand, Dubai to Dhaka. But here's the difference. In the newsroom, I'm in my comfort zone. With my studio crew, even the cameras are robotically controlled from another room. But here you are, looking right back at me. I see all of you, all your faces, undefeated, robust, ready to change the world and ready to make a difference. Now, looking at all of you here makes me want to turn back time to be where you are right now, and just thinking of the opportunities you're going to get gives me goosebumps. But here I am, expected to dish out nuggets of wisdom, some witty reportage about the future that lies ahead of you. Okay, so before I attempt to do all that and make a fool of myself, let's take a moment to remember that today is also a big day for all your parents. And I want to see a show of hands from you, parents. How many of you to be here today? I'm sure a lot of you. There we go. So like many of you, I'm truly blessed to have parents who stood behind me through my formative years. Now, even though neither mom nor dad had the opportunity to go to university, they made sure that my brother and I could. My father used to tell me and my brother that we must study hard and not end up like him, who, at the age of 60, with all his experience, could never climb the corporate ladder because he didn't have a university degree. Perhaps sounds familiar to some of you. Well, here we are today. Thank goodness our parents persevered. And I'm definitely glad mine did, especially since my path towards my degree and my eventual career encountered one or two detours. Now, unlike many of you, I did not go straight on to get my A-levels after I got my O-levels. Some of your parents may have remembered a young, 16-year-old model called Glenda Chong back then. Young Glenda somehow managed to convince her parents that it was a good idea to drop out of education to pursue a career as a full-time model. She was young and giddy at the prospect of a glamorous life making fast bucks. And Mom did not want to dampen my spirits. Now instead, she made me promise to go back to school after I've had my share of fun. I remember her telling me this, "Girl, You will grow old and your looks will fade. Then what? And then she went on to convince me to set aside all my earnings, and she knew that, with foresight, that a young teenage girl making a 5-figure sum from one shoot is likely to lose her way. So she kept me honest with a modest $500 a month as my allowance. So thanks to my mum, 3 years later, I had saved enough money to partially finance the degree I wanted to pursue overseas. My parents had to sponsor the other half of my tuition fees. Fortunately for me, I knew exactly what I wanted to be since I was 12 years old. Back then, when there was only one TV in the house, now there wasn't cable or broadband, no YouTube, no Facebook to entertain us. The whole family would gather around the TV every night to watch the news before a movie came on. And one night, when the news was on, I pointed to the TV and told my dad, "Daddy, I want to be her." So off I went to my path towards my goal. I matriculated at RMIT in Melbourne, Australia, headed to Boston University a year later, where I majored in broadcast journalism and graduated with a Bachelor of Science. I was focused, and I had my eye on the target. I told my parents that after graduation I would be off to New York to be an anchor woman. After all, didn't Alicia Keys and Jay-Z say there's nothing you can't do now you're in New York? How mistaken I was. Now, instead of reading the news for ABC or NBC, I found myself waiting on tables at an Asian restaurant, hardly getting by on tips and the hospitality of good friends. During the day, I would send out my resume, and by night, I would wait on tables to make rent. It was a while before I came to terms with the failure of my first attempt. It was particularly hard, especially with my early success as a fashion model. Now, eventually, I realized I had to start from the bottom. My parents welcomed me home with open arms, and I proceeded to understudy senior reporters. My first assignment was a homicide, and I almost bolted from the scene of the crime. Thankfully, I stood my ground and I went on, going from one uncomfortable report to the next awkward one until one day in 1998, when scheduling conflict at then MediaCorp, which was called Television Corporation of Singapore, presented me with my first break as a newsreader. But I'm not here to tell you that that after my first break, the rest was history. Now, some of you, I understand, are lucky. You have a job waiting for you, and you feel fully prepared for what lies ahead of you. Some of you may still be undecided about which way to go. You might be feeling anxious, maybe a little insecure. Either way, life will continue to present challenges before you. At this stage, at your first interview, your first job, your first promotion, even your first attempt as an entrepreneur. Now, you work hard to get that next big thing, and new challenges will arise. There will also be setbacks. Life is a roller coaster. Now, one of the first things I learned when I joined then TCS in 1997, change is the one constant. Outside these gates, the world out there can be mean and brutal, competition tough. Now, case in point, even after making it as my anchor, my life did not get less difficult. I slogged, I made sacrifices, I endured. I had to prove my detractors wrong. But once you figure out how to cope, life does get better. I tuned in the news and I tuned out the chatter. And fight for what you want, even if it's going to take you 10 years. Because that's how long it took me to convince my bosses that I was good enough to run a bureau overseas. So in 2008, I got my posting as China correspondent for Channel News Asia. And even then, my detractors placed bets as to how long I would last there. 6 months was the going rate. Again, I focused on the news and not the chatter. I lasted longer than my intended contract, and I thrived. And in my 3 years in China, I learned more about people, society, perspective, and myself than I had in the last 30 years. And you never stop learning. After I came back from Shanghai in 2011, I had to adapt as a broadcaster to interact on social media in order to stay connected with you. Now, it's like learning to speak a new language, literally. I recently discovered hashtags. My generation called that symbol hex. It was found on the telephone, or you use it when you write your address to indicate the floor in an apartment. For example, hex 0708. And just in case you all are tweeting right now, my handle is @Glenda Chong 7. And I've hashtagged this on Facebook and Twitter already. So before you head out to your next interview or your new job, just remember that first impressions really count. So here are my tips. Number 1, girls, a smile is not enough. Lipstick and eyeliner completes your look. Don't be lazy. Number 2, boys, A wink won't get you very far, but chivalry will win you many fans. 3, be mindful of personal hygiene, especially in this heat. Number 4, be prepared to do your homework. Number 5, be punctual. Making others wait suggests that you do not respect their time. If your first job doesn't work out for you, don't worry. Not many of us marry our first loves anyways. And just like any romance, your career will be full of heartaches. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. It will be tough out there. And when you find the career that you want to give your life to, be focused and give it your all. And here, my tip continues. Number 6, be respectful. You never know who will end up being your boss. Number 7, you will encounter detractors. Don't let them spoil your party. Kill negativity with a killer smile. Number 8, love your job. It makes waking up in the morning so much fun. Number 9, don't quit just because it gets tough. It happens to everyone in every industry at some stage. And number 10, finally, if you insist on working in media, remember this is one of the most unforgiving industries. You're only as good as your last story. Develop skin as thick as hide. So today marks the beginning of your next chapter. Your university days are over, but life's real learning starts today. I know I'm expected to end my speech with some wise words as you embark on your future. Frankly, I don't remember who said what when I finished my bachelor at Boston University or when I graduated from my master's here at NUS. But I remember dying to run outside to toss that hat into the air with my friends. So I'll end with a simple piece of advice from my mum, which served me well today and many, many times in life. And this is what she says to me all the time. Girl, be like a swan, elegant on the surface, but beneath it, paddle like hell, so no matter how difficult your life gets, you will always be graceful. So congratulations, graduating class of 2013, start paddling.